The Egyptians believe that you're not dead until somebody stops uttering your name. For as long as we talk about cinema, it will be alive.
It must feel absolutely surreal to be at the finish line of something that's been gestating for 30 years. And it's fascinating to me to hear you talk about how when you originally came across this material in the early 90s, the approach you had was one that you realized later was the wrong approach. And so I'm curious about what made you realize that was not the right approach and how that led you to what ended up happening with the.
Well, I think that speaks very clearly to what I think are three stages of a director's evolution in a way, or biography. I think you spend the first 10 years sort of trying to get comfortable and learning to be comfortable with who you are, and you try to see yourself in the material that you're making, and you're more dogmatic. So I read Nightmare Alley and I thought, well, how would I do it? And I would do it being a little more towards the Todd Browning vibe, and then you have another 10 years in which you little by little learn to listen rather than talk. You learn to listen to the material. And the last part is when you are now flexible enough to actually take each movie and make it a learning experience for you, but also make it in its own terms. And when we started talking about Nightmare Alley, we were trying to find a handle. So we started reading William Lindsay Gresham's work, and we tried to piece together a biography of him with the snippets that exist, cross-pollinating the biography of his kid, his wife, which he became mostly an appendage to the biography of C.S. Lewis, because his wife left him and married C.S. Lewis, and a lot of his biography comes from as a lateral sort of oblique footnote to that. And we found that he was a really interesting character. And we found out that he was very tortured. And we found that Nightmare Alley was written, in our opinion, almost like an oblique autobiography.
I will ask you simple questions. You will answer in short sentences only what you believe to be absolute truth.
Absolute truth. I can do that.
He was a seeker. He was a guy that wanted an answer. That he dabbled in Catholicism, Dianetics, yoga, meditation, the tarot, psychoanalysis, physical culturism, everything, magic, mentalism. He was an incredibly curious mind seeking an answer. Unfortunately, I think he faced an enormous void, and he ended up taking his own life. That was the answer. When he got throat cancer, But the legacy of his almost monumental but small amount of writings guided us into thinking, we started with a fresco, and then little by little, the movie became a character study.
I read Kim's beautiful Criterion essay on the 47 film, which touches on a lot of that. And I'm curious about what it was, like basically to collaborate with somebody from that perspective of a critic of more. I know that you can relate to that mentality to some degree, but are also, your own sort of filmmaker. So what did this collaboration bring to the process for you?
Well, first of all, the research and the way we approached the material was completely fresh, because we would approach the novel and then we each underlined the novel. And we decided very, very early on, we're not making a remake, we're making a riff on the novel. Let's not reference the original film. We both seen it, we both like it, but we think we can do something different with this. We can do something that is about today, about the anxieties and the need for narrative truth and reality, and narrative lies and reality, and how urgent it is to answer that, and the anxiety that permeates the atmosphere right now, and we thought, isn't it great to take a character that is 2 steps away from losing everything, because he's completely shrouded in lies and he's not shielded by truth. And we started going at it with that. The novel contains some of the best dialogue. The vernacular in the novel is fantastic. And we started underlining, but we underlined 30, 40% the same passages and 60% not, or 70. And that was fascinating because she would say, what about this? And it had nothing to do with production. Like I would always say, well, we can do this. And she would be going at the novel saying, this is great, not questioning how we were going to achieve it or this and that. Then we both started tackling all the work that Gresham did. She read some, I read some, biography, same way. And then we started writing different pieces, and we would get the piece that the other had written and rewrite it without consulting. And we would exchange that. And then at the end, we were side by side, writing at the same time. And I think what it gave me was a perspective that was informed, in my case, by painting, by other literature. In the case of Kim, a deep knowledge of film. Then we started watching, really in a very disciplined manner. We watched a pre-code, to get the patois, to get the rhythms, to get the language. And then we watched movies that were not the well-known noir, Moontide, Born to Kill. And the choice of that was very curated in a different way. We were not going to the big ones, Out of the Past, Laura. We were going to the brutal ones. Or watching something like Il Grido by Antonioni, which is a neorealism. But neorealism has the same, sometimes a pulse that is similar to some noir. And we would watch Beyond the Forest with Bette Davis, or Too Late for Tears with Elizabeth Scott, which is not the best known noir, but a fascinating one.
Well, and it's fascinating too, because a lot of times directors will say, I made my cast watch this film to understand what I was going for. But how much time is Bradley Cooper going to have to go through the list of films that you just list? I mean, how much did you need them to realize the extent of the world that you were building on from a noir?
Well, look, the beauty of this is we were not doing a genre. I mean, there are obviously cinephile references. The entrance to the carnival is exactly the carnival from Strangers on a Train. Exactly. You can see a freeze frame. We changed the number of attractions because the carnival is at 10 in 1, but that's that. There's a reference to the telephone strangulation in Detour and so on and so forth. But we didn't want to make an artifact. We wanted to make a movie that was real and happening and about today. So with the actors, that was it. That was the great thing. We were looking for truth of the moment. Yeah. We were not saying, oh, you have to imitate so and so. The genre comes with the city and Lilith and the deco architecture. The movie has a pedal change, almost like a piano. You're playing the same melody, but you push a pedal, and there's a darker, somber, more cinematic orientation of the movie. But we made it very gradual. One of the structured things we did, Eric, that was really interesting is I knew we wanted a happy ending in the middle. He gets the book, he gets the girl. He has the world and everything in it. Yeah. And then the camera goes into a shot where the carnival is receding on that crane. Happy ending. And then you cut 2 years later and the guy is completely unhappy and frustrated and he's never going to have enough. And we knew that. And then we said, we have to make the movie 2 movements in color, shape, tone, all that.
Yeah. And I also think that sort of false ending is the ultimate gut punch in terms of the narratives we've been trained to expect versus the narratives that noir has always woken us up to. And I wonder then, what is the moment for noir now? How do you fit this particular genre into the milieu in which you're making it?
I think really that noir comes always from self-examination of the country. Noir is almost the flip side of the American dream. There is an incredible sense of a barrier of the have and have-nots, and that barrier can only be broken through crime and trespassing, the social norms, and there is a tension between that was real in post-Depression, post-World War America, and is real right now in a different way, but that tension is there, prime for noir. The two genres that I'm attracted that reflect their time are horror and noir, very much. And they need that surface tension, to exist. If you don't have that, because look, to me, here's the thing. Noir is birthed at a time when American realism is alive in painting. There's a post-Hemingway punchy prose that is adopted to rip the lid of the American dream. You have Thomas Hart Benton painting industrial realities, suffocating a pastoral America. You have Edward Hopper talking about the imprisonment of architecture. You have people writing, they shoot horses, don't they? Day of the Locust, Miss Lonely Hearts. This is not, they're not birthing a genre. They're expressing a pulsion and a tension. And I think that's really interesting. And it's very now. I think we are in a moment of great tension between truth and reality, as I said, and illusion and truth. And I think Stan is a character that is really interesting to follow. We decided the camera would act almost like a little kid following Stan all the time. It goes behind him and tries to take a peek. It's a very curious roaming camera, but we follow him, and the whole movie becomes a prologue for the last 2 minutes in which he finds himself.
What is your name?
Stanton Carlisle.
Are you a true medium?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Carlisle,
Doctor, how about that?
please lie down.
I'm glad you bring up camera, because what I think is fascinating is that when you close your eyes and you think of film noir, you instinctively think in terms of black and white. And so
Yes.
in terms of production design, cinematography, art direction, there are so many layers of the craft of this movie in which color is a key storytelling device. So how did you sort of approach that challenge, given the sort of tradition that you were playing with?
I was a PA in a movie with Gabriel Figueroa, which was the greatest Mexican cinematographer. He was had a great kinship with Greg Toland, for example. They were very good friends. And he said to me, when you are direct for black and white, you use the greens and the reds and the golds to give midtones, to do all the grays. So we said, well, let's take that palette. There is a version of the movie which I hope can be seen that is absolutely, it's not about a movie that you turn the color off. The movie is almost like a serigraph in black and white that then has another layer in color, Wow. But if you saw the movie in black and white, you wouldn't be seeing a movie where the color was out. It looks exactly like a movie from the 40s. Dan and I agreed on cross-lighting in a very classical way, and lowering the ceilings to be in the frame. And there were decisions and staging it in ones. There's a lot of single shot scenes. And the only thing that we could not replicate, and that's why about 50 of the skies in the movie are digital plates, is we could not replicate the density of the clouds that you get in black and white, which you need a color filter. So I went to the VFX department and I said, can you give me this density of clouds in post? Let's not use the real skies. Let's put these plates. And we did that. And it's there. And I hope one day we can see it in black and white. But what happened to me is I would check the dailies in black and white after the pandemic stopped. I started checking the dailies in my computer. The Mac has a thing called the grayscale filter. And I started checking them on the grayscale filter. And little by little, I went, oh my God, I wish. But I knew with the shape that I had tried to do a black and white release that we needed for the movie to be sustainable to try and do it in color. But there is a layer that is perfect black and white.
What I did want to ask you about with respect to the end of the film and the last shot in particular is Bradley's performance, because it is such a vivid, lived in and messy and sad kind of delivery that he gives, and it feels very authentic. How did you go about sort of figuring out with Bradley the kind of broken soul that you wanted to put in such vivid detail on screen?
Well, the ending is very important in the sense, well, look, first of all, when you finally cast a movie, you had the fabric, you had the patterns, but you tailor the suit for the person that is going to wear it. So the movie is tailored for and around Bradley, and what he brings is the movie. because the movie that exists is tailored around him. For example, when we had our first meeting, he said, what kind of research should we do? And I said, the thing I know for sure is I said, you need to take boxing, and you need to box a couple of times a week, because the physicality of a Stan who survived in the Lamb or jumping trains during Depression, or, it would be a guy that can take care of himself. And you need, there's a certain physicality of the period that you cannot simulate. So I knew that, and I knew that this would be a role that he hadn't done before, but Bradley leads with truth. And one of the first things he does is he needs to find the voice of Stan. So we found the voice of Stan, and then little by little, Stan became physical. I love the way he works with props and hats and cigarettes and all that style. But the truth is what is beautiful about how it emerges. And the final shot, from the first screenplay to the last, it said, this is the final shot. And now we see it all crumble. And the difference between the last shot in the first movie and this is Lilith asks him, what do they want, the marks? And he says, to be found out, like everybody else. And that's what Stan wants. So there are many colors that are coming out: relief, release, abandonment, complete existentialism, nothing's left, everything's, all of them have to come out. And so we talked a lot about that shot, and then we came to that conclusion. The whole movie is a prologue to that shot. And because we opened with a big question mark, the guy dragging the corpse into a hole and burning it. And the answer is the last shot. So it's perfect bookends. We had the notion that we would carry that set through production, and we would now and then try to shoot that ending a few times. We said, we're not going to get it the first time. But we did. We had a kinship enough that we knew we were very fortunate that we had time to process the Stan of the first part of the shoot, the pause, absorb it. And when we landed again and we shot that shot, we got together, Bradley, Miles, and I, and we said, we gotta go inside and we gotta shoot this. Like completely unexpected. And we came in, we did it, and we nailed it. The first take. We did a few more, but the first take, it was nailed.
I was thinking about that in a contemporary context as well. I went back and looked at the conversation we had a year ago when you had to shut down, and you had said that the world had changed both practically, but also in a spiritual sense. Having gone through everything that we've been through over the past year and change, where do you find yourself as a storyteller now in relation to that sort of history as a filmmaker?
It's a very curious place. It's a very curious moment now, because at the same time, we went through a pandemic in which the first thing was safety, and the second thing was nourishment, and the third thing we needed was stories. The medicine, food, shelter, and stories is what we all tried to go through the pandemic. I don't think people have seen more narrative content in a continuity line probably in the history of mankind. In a way, and our relationship is very different. And we are at a moment in which, for me, we have choices on how we watch the stories, but why they matter remains a personal decision for the storyteller. And the only thing we can do is, look, we make it because we have to make them. We always should try to do the things that we are not prepared to do. Like I do Shape of Water. And then the safe choice is, let's go back to what, quote unquote, what I do. The choice that is challenging and interesting and truthful is, let's go into a territory that I haven't done.
Can you read minds?
Yes, I can, under the right circumstances.
Keep your answers brief.
What do I want?
To be found out, same as everybody else.
Are you in contact with the beyond?
Well, we've had our share of snake charmers in the past.
It's interesting because I remember seeing you in the night that you won your Oscars for Shape of Water, and in the chaos, just tried to get a word in and asked you how you thought this might change things for what you can do. And specifically, it seemed like you were already thinking about Mountain of Madness and this would help get that made. So
Yes,
it,
that one's scary, but there's others that are, and not scary in the genre sense, but scary to you to face. When you face a different equation that your normal comfort zone, or that is asking different tools, it's really worth it. I mean, I find that more often than not, the movies are hard to do because they're worth it. This one was basically about 3 years of my life. And I thought on the beginning, this one will be really convivial, really easy, really fulfilling. It's going to be fun. We don't have huge technical difficulties. And then it became one of the most, if not the most challenging movie to put together. But I think that's the way. I mean, I hope to say what I'm doing next soon, and it's going to be a really challenging one.
well, let me ask you this. It's kind of a big picture question, but how do you see cinema sort of fitting into the equation of the media landscape we're in right now, when a lot of people are really terrified about whether or not this, as a business, as an art form, this medium can continue to sort of have the impact that it's had in the past?
I think that the pieces are moving so rapidly, and they're moving rapidly in an unexpected way. We really don't know what's going to change. I mean, I think the foothold is really precarious, so any prediction can be completely trumped by a single movement in 2 seconds. And I think that the thing that we know is we're going to have audiovisual storytelling. I mean, look, I spent a good part of the weekend hanging out with the Beatles, and I think that rhythm would be impossible even as a documentary form a few years ago. But it's a hangout moment now. And
Having
we have
hours in one in different components, yeah.
But the delivery system, the streaming, the fact that now you have a relationship with your home and the images in it in a different way, and at the same time, you have cinema alive and well in other movies, and you see it. And I think that the duty is for us to keep the scale of cinematic storytelling alive and well. And I think then the rest is moving around. Is the moving around. We just have to say, can we try the scale of our ambitions and the scale of the scope? Can it remain big?
I heard this really lovely tribute you gave to Steven Spielberg at an event in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago, where you talked about texting with him during the pandemic and sharing thoughts on movies. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of movies the two of you were watching together during the pandemic and sharing notes on?
Yeah, like we would send an image and say, what movie am I watching? Without any reference. That's one aspect of it. We would start discussing the craft, and we would start discussing how did this shot get made. I would text with him and George Miller. I would say, there's a shot on Duel that I think George Miller may have seen when he did Mad Max. And I would text George Miller and say, George, did you see Duel as an influence for Mad Max? And George would say, yes, I did. I would tell Steven, guess what? Or there's things that were completely geeky that even Steven didn't know. I said, I love the homage that you did to Night Gallery on Duel. I says, what homage? And I said, there's a medicine card from an episode in Night Gallery, and in one of the exterior shots when Dennis Weaver is arriving to the Snake Zoo, he says, Universal may have had it as a prop, but it was not on purpose. And then we would go and discuss like the importance of a shot on a Michael Curtiz movie, or he would say, have you seen this other movie? We introduced each other to different movies. I was watching anything from Mr. Lucky, and I would discuss the design of the sets. There's a line from Mr. Lucky that says, if I want, you want mud on your skirt. And I thought, what a great colloquialism. And Lilith suddenly says, if I want mud in my skirt, I can find it. It was really, really fun to do that. And the depth of the cinephile love that then we talk about a particular actor, and sing the praises, of a particular director. We would mostly the classics you would imagine. And I must say, Eric, I think that sort of an Egyptian notion, for as long as we talk about cinema, it will be alive. The Egyptians believe that you're not dead until somebody stops uttering your name. Before the pandemic hit, I dreamt of a film where I interviewed George Miller and Michael Mann. My hope is that if I can, I would love to have screenings where we talk with the audience about the craft and about the images and about how important a dolly is on a crane and the choice of lens and this and that. We have to talk about this.
We'll make it happen. I know where to find you. Good luck with the rest of all this press stuff, and we'll talk more soon.
See you later, man.